very warm welcome to all of you joining us from all around the world. My name is Mashael Yazdanie, and it's my sincere pleasure to welcome you to this launch of the Swiss Sufficiency Lab, or the SSL, together with my colleagues here, Andréa Montant at the University of Lausanne, and Dr. Yamina Saheb, who's the director and co-founder of the World Sufficiency Lab. So the SSL is actually the first national lab of the World Sufficiency Lab, and we're very happy about the enthusiasm that we felt across the country and even across borders for this new initiative. Just through a few communications, we received about 200 registrations for this event, so that indicates that the pulse is strong and there's a desire to really connect and coordinate on this topic, both at the national and at the international level. So our agenda today will start with a welcome note by Empa's directorate. Our director is Tanja Zimmermann. And then it'll be followed by a keynote from the World Sufficiency Lab by Dr. Yamina Saheb on the Switzerland sufficiency gap and its metamorphosis ahead. We'll then go to our roundtable and the live Q&A, followed by a short presentation by Andréa and I on the vision for the SSL, the roadmap, and ways to get involved. And we'll have a Q&A finally at the end as well. So we'll have Q&A sparsed throughout the session, and Andréa is going to inform us also on how that works. Just for your information, this session is being recorded. It will be shared afterwards along with some other materials via email, including the slides as well.
So if you have a question during this launch, you can just use the Q&A feature. It's not the chat, it's another one. You can find it when you click on the three little dots. Please check if your question hasn't already been answered before asking it. And you can also upvote question if there are some of them you really find interesting. And we will try to reply to it as much as possible by chat, and we will select it, few of them, 2 or 3 per question time, to ask directly to the different speakers.
Thanks, Andréa. So now it's my sincere pleasure to welcome Professor Dr. Tanja Zimmermann to the stage. She's been the director of Empa since 2022, and she has a background in materials science. Today, she'll introduce Empa to you, which is the home of the SSL embedded within the Urban Energy Systems Laboratory. And she'll share some of Empa's innovative transdisciplinary projects focused on societal impact with you as well. Tanja has also been a personal mentor to me, and I really come to admire her vision for translating research into positive societal impact, both within her domain and beyond that. So with that, I'm very happy to pass the floor to you, Tanja.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Marcel and Andreas, for organizing this very important event. And I think it's really nice, your initiative, what you brought now to the ground and what will start today officially. So yeah, maybe you go to the next slide. So this is a short introduction of Empa. So Empa, we say, is the place where innovation starts, because we are within the ETH domain, most probably the institution that is quite close to society, to industry, also to the hospitals in our focus area health. So in general, we have 4 research focus areas. This is nanomaterials and manufacturing technologies, built environment, energy resources and emissions. And this is, of course, very important for your topic also, and health, and both topics go sometimes also hand in hand. And how do we do so? No, maybe just stick to this very shortly to the last slide. Sorry for this.
Sorry.
How are we doing this? We want really to make an impact. And when we develop something in the lab, then we have also to validate it. And for this, we have the technology transfer platforms. And here we have Nest as a housing platform for sustainable construction technologies. We have the eHub for energy. We have Move for sustainable mobility, and the Coding Competence Center. And what is very important is the open innovation. And we do not only work interdisciplinary, we work transdisciplinary. And here we have an outreach also to the social sciences, what is really important, through joint initiatives and internal research call and things that go also a lot beyond Empa. And now you can switch to the next slide. Thanks, Marcel. So one initiative we started is Mining the Atmosphere, where we want to transform the energy and built environment towards net zero and beyond. And this is an initiative across Empa, where half of all Empa research labs participate. It's on CO2 capture, CO2 conversion, and CO2 use as in things like, for example, CO2 negative concrete or CO2 negative insulation materials, earthbound materials, and sufficiency plays here a very important role. Path is also planned a new demonstrator on CO2 negative asphalt, where we want to make a template that we can also then integrate in different cantons, and the first canton will be in Zug. And maybe when you go on to the next slide. So I want especially to tell you something about a bigger vision we have. We launched recently the Climate Solutions Hub. This is between ERWAG, our sister institution for water research, and Empa for material research and technology. And you all know about the problem. We have the global temperature increase, and this is really a severe problem. And here we have to find solutions, and we are developing a lot of technological solutions, but the scaling does not work. And this is really a problem. And this is why we launched the Climate Solutions Hub, to see how can we scale the technology we develop. How can we scale, for example, CO2 negative materials like the CO2 negative concrete you can see on one image, or also the urine fertilizer developed by ERWAG. And maybe you can click once more. And the Climate Solutions Hub is therefore a transdisciplinary approach involving relevant stakeholders. And we want to develop solutions for mitigating and adapting to climate change. And we want also to find innovative ways for supporting their uptake in practice. This is very important for us. And when you click once more, then you can see how this is set up. We have the climate positive infrastructures we are building on our campuses. This is, for example, net zero construction. This is blue-green infrastructure. So on the image that has been developed by ERWAG, we have an aquifer heat storage, water reuse, etc. But all the things are not scaling at the moment. And how can we work on this? We have to reach out to social sciences and humanities. And this is one thing we are doing at the moment, where we will have in our Climate Solutions Hub 2 tenure track positions, group leader positions who come from the social sciences and can help with modeling, but also with really finding then solutions. We have links to our demonstrators and living labs, like I demonstrated at the beginning, the nest building, other living labs we have. Also move for the mobility, the e-hub, or also the water hub we have. And we want to reach out to other institutions within the ETH domain. We are doing already, but also across Switzerland, and maybe also once beyond Switzerland, to really work on the scaling, where often it does not work finally, and we have too many technologies and too many materials that cannot scale. Maybe when you click once more, the idea is to develop innovation scaling templates. And what do we mean with this? And when you click once more, then it's like this, that we have bundles of technologies, and there are supportive social elements. And how could we bring this together? How could we enable cities to quickly replicate a solution? And there's one example that we have bicycle roads in Canton Zug. We will build with CO2 negative asphalt, and we want to use this then as template and see how can we take this as template and how can we implement then, for example, in another canton. We want to support large firms and including them in their strategies, and create also all the framework that is needed around it. So this means they reach out to policymakers, the legal framework, all what you see here in the circles and what belong to the technology development. And until now this was not connected at all. We had on one hand the technological development, and on the other hand we had somewhere the social sciences, but here we want to bring both together so that we really can make an impact. Yes, and when you click now once more, I'm already finished. This was only a very short insight in what we are doing. And I think it goes more in interdisciplinarity, it goes more in transdisciplinarity. This is very important. This is also very important for your topic, so that we all work together among all stakeholder groups, that we can find solutions and implement also the solutions. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tanja, for your insightful introduction and helping us also to connect the sufficiency topic with the broader vision of Empa. So now we'll shift to our keynote talk from Dr. Yamina Saheb and Valentin Stuhlfauth, I hope I pronounced it okay, which will focus on Switzerland's sufficiency gap and the gap report about its metamorphosis. So I will stop sharing my screen now to...
Thank you, Mashael. Good morning, everyone. I am delighted that we are here today for the launch of the Swiss Sufficiency Lab, and at the same time the launch of the Swiss Sufficiency Gap Report. This is the first Sufficiency Lab that we are launching, and at the same time the first Sufficiency Gap Report we are launching. How did the idea of having national sufficiency labs and sufficiency gap reports was born? It was born after my experience during the IPCC process, where I was working on introducing the sufficiency concept. And the main question that I was asked all the time is what is sufficiency? How is it described or evaluated or considered in academic literature? And it was quite challenging to answer this question, because sufficiency is almost in all disciplines and in philosophy, but each discipline looked to sufficiency through its own lens, and bringing everything together was quite challenging. As follow-up of that, we did set this World Sufficiency Lab in 2024 with David Neese from the University of Australia, with the objective to bring sufficiency to the light and to make sufficiency first included in the policies at the national and at the international level. And to do that, we had several workshops and several interviews with different experts at different level, with practitioners, policymakers, etc. And we did find out that the first thing that people would like to know is what sufficiency is, and how is it considered in academic literature. Answering this question with just one single answer, one single sentence, is quite challenging, because sufficiency is almost in all disciplines, and this is why we started by setting what we call the chat sufficiency. So I just prompted this morning. So the chat sufficiency brings to you what sufficiency is about, or how is it considered in different scientific disciplines, from 550,000 academic literature. And you would agree with me that it's not doable by humans. And this is why we want to use large language models that it provides you the answer, with the scientific literature, the resources that you could retrieve here. We just launched this. We first started with the chat sufficiency, and this is just to give you an idea how what you get as a result. I prompted this morning. I asked what does how sufficiency links to equity and justice. So it brought to us a synthesis of how this link is made in scientific literature, with all the literature, or the most relevant literature that you have here that discusses this link. And then the next step that people ask for is when they know a little bit what sufficiency is about, then they usually ask us if there is a place where we could learn more, where to be trained on sufficiency. Unfortunately, this does not exist. Since 2 years, I am lecturing on sufficiency at Sciences Po, but this is not enough. In total, I trained by the end of this year around 200 people, but this is not enough. We cannot make the change with only 200 people from Sciences Po and with some Canadian universities. And this is why we are working on an online training that will be made available in spring. And this is then people say, how can I act? What can I do to make sufficiency included in the policies of our country? And this is how the idea of setting the National Sufficiency Labs came. And the Swiss one is the first one, with the objective that we do cross-fertilization cross countries, because sufficiency is very much grounded in the local context. It's not like efficiency. An efficient fridge in Paris would be efficient in Zurich and in Berlin. However, sufficiency in Paris is likely to be different from sufficiency in Zurich or Berlin. And to support the National Sufficiency Labs, we do offer an online platform where the community can collaborate and contribute. We have here the countries where we are working on their sufficiency labs. By the end of this year, we should have around at least 10 countries, 10 national labs. And here you have the Swiss space. And I assume that Andréa and Mashael would be happy to welcome you in this space and you start working together. Now, when we look at the sufficiency in Switzerland, so the word is not new in Switzerland, it's used, so it's already one positive point. However, when we look into the details, what we see is that at the local level, civil society, philanthropy, and academia, we do have several groups. We identified around 100 groups considering sufficiency. But what we identify is that there is no group or specific actor fully dedicated to sufficiency. So all these actors, at some point, they face conflicting priorities, and sufficiency is very often the overlooked part of it. And then when you go to the content or the city level, so you do have some cities like Zurich, for example, they included sufficiency in their energy and action climate plan. You do have Le Canton de Vaud, etc. Sometimes it's included in the local law. However, it is understood as energy sufficiency only. Wine sufficiency, I will come back to that, goes far beyond energy issues. But the most striking thing is that there is nothing at the federal level. And not only that there is nothing, and I guess Cédric can come back to that, but the federal level seems to reject the concept of sufficiency based on the answer that was provided a few weeks ago to the MP who asked about including energy sufficiency in the Swiss federal level policy making. So basically there is something happening in Switzerland. However, it is fully fragmented, and what we know from the science of organizations is that it is unlikely that fragmented landscape could lead to the emerging of the concept to anchor it in the law. And before going to the sufficiency gap in Switzerland, I would like to take you a little bit about what we did find on sufficiency in scientific literature. Sufficiency is at the same time discussed in philosophy, and it's very practical, it's very specific, because in philosophy they make a reference to sufficientarianism and not always to sufficiency, at least the previous, the old work on sufficiency. And it is clear for philosophers that sufficiency is about justice, equity, and fairness. However, philosophers are usually blind about, at least those working on sufficientarianism, about how to make it happen. So you need to go to social science and political science to understand that it's an organizing principle of societies, or in other words, it's about the functioning of our democracies, and with the objective to ensure that everyone has a good life. But having a good life in one planet is possible only if we do take into account planetary boundaries, and if we do embed economics in planetary boundaries, and not the other way around as it is today. And with the objective to ensure that that human needs are met, are satisfied, and everyone has access to a good life. By combining all what we did find in the literature, we ended with this conclusion, with this definition of sufficiency that landed in the IPCC report. And if I would summarize it, sufficiency is articulated around 4 pillars. First, it's a set of policy measures and daily practices. It's not behavior and lifestyle change. This is individual approach. Sufficiency is about collective effort that we should be making together to ensure that there is continuity of life on this planet. And another mistake that we usually find, sufficiency is not about reducing the demand. This is what, to some extent, efficiency could do. Sufficiency is about avoiding upfront the demand. And it's not just about energy, but it's all about all other natural resources. And of course, from the philosophical, from the philosophy, the sufficiency is about justice. So all what we do must be with the objective of ensuring well-being for all, and well-being for all is possible only if we limit the time of the overshoot of planetary boundaries that we have already overshooten, unfortunately, as of today. So using this framework, we analyzed what's going on in Switzerland to see what sufficiency could bring. The first step was where to start the analysis in the case of Switzerland. And what we did is we looked to what are the worries of the Swiss voters. And when you look at the top 20 concerns of the Swiss voters since 2023, we identified, at least we worked on five of them. So the health issues, the inequality issues, intergenerational inequalities, the environmental protection and climate change, it's still a second main concern for the Swiss voters, and then the relations with the EU and the energy issues. I will take you first through the environmental one and climate change. From the environmental perspective, we analyzed mainly the climate change gap in Switzerland. So from climate change perspective, Switzerland did set a target to be climate neutral by 2050 by considering that Swiss negative emissions will be sent somewhere in the global south to allow the Swiss lifestyle to continue as it is. But in reality, when you consider the past emissions of Switzerland is in a situation of carbon debt. Whatever option, there are different options to calculate that. Whatever option you calculate, so Switzerland should have been at the earliest zero carbon by 1980 or at the latest by 2010. These calculations are based on the International Court of Justice advisory opinion, and it's based on a fair share of the remaining carbon budget. What does that mean? It means that Switzerland, like all the countries that we see here in red, are the countries that will be targeted first by the ongoing claim, the ongoing request from small islands for climate reparation. And this is going to happen now, is likely to happen because these countries are organized, because climate change, impact of climate change are increasingly threatening the human life. And what the ICG opinion brings to us is that it puts the climate issue far beyond the Paris Climate Agreement. It clearly says that it's about human rights. So any country that does not take into account its carbon debt is a country that does not respect human rights. Now, if we look at it, when we go to the details, what is in the Swiss climate plan? What we realize is that when we look at what are the levers considered for the Swiss climate neutrality target, we see that the main lever is actually the decarbonization of supply. Decarbonization of supply when considering the negative emissions, these emissions that Switzerland is planning to send somewhere to the global south. There is a little bit on efficiency, so even efficiency is not well considered in the climate modeling from the Swiss Federation, and there is almost nothing in all sectors for sufficiency. Why do we have this situation? First, because the modeling framework used does not allow at all to capture the sufficiency potential. Second, because there is really nothing at the federal level regarding sufficiency. So that's why the modelers do not have to work on how to model sufficiency. The next step in sufficiency is to look at it from a social perspective. And for this, I give the floor to my colleague Valentin, who is PhD candidate at the World Sufficiency Lab, and he's working on modeling sufficiency policies for housing and mobility at large scale. Valentin, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So yes, I will briefly present empirical results on housing and energy inequalities in Switzerland. So the first slide is on household expenses. It shows that the poorest households, for the poorest household, basic need fulfillment leaves virtually no room for leisure or in gross income. In their gross income. For the most unequal components are health and housing and energy. for housing and energy, about 1/3 of total spending in gross income are of the poorest households, and it's less than 7% for the richest one on the right side. These results have clear implications. Low-income households have almost no remaining income for discretionary spendings, which are here in green. Yeah, no, in blue, in dark blue, sorry. They rely heavily on social transfer to fulfill their good life. Yet leisure is considered a fundamental need by Max Nifner in Max Nifner metrics. It's not at all luxury, I would say. This highlights a structural economic issue. Fundamental needs satisfaction is highly unequal, and it depends on economic redistribution. You can move on to the next slide, please, Yamina. Thank you. This slide shows that housing and energy insecurity is strongly linked to income. There are two indicators. The first one is the share of people in arrears, having arrears on utility bills in blue, and the second one is the share of people living in overcrowded dwellings in orange. For lowest income deciles, it's around 6 to 8% of the population concerned, and for highest income deciles, it's below 2% for overcrowded dwellings, and below 0.6% having arrears on utility bills. This means that higher income households face almost no housing and energy hardship, while even in Switzerland, which is a really rich country, access to inadequate housing and energy remain unequal. You can move on to the next slide, please. Yeah. In this slide, we can see that ownership of rental and secondary housing is really concentrated among the richest households to the right. The share of the fifth quintile income has 39 or close to 40% of people having a secondary house or rental investments, while on the other side for the first quintile it's 13%, sorry, for the poorest. And there is a trend in that rental housing is increasingly controlled by higher income households. This contributes to concentration of housing wealth and reinforces income inequalities, between tenants and owners. And we can move on to the next slide. Thanks. This is the last slide I will show you. This is for ownership, home ownership, and it's showing that it is becoming increasingly inaccessible for low-income households. It's a heat map that you can see on the different compartments for ages between 18 to 30 to 61 plus, and for each row considered are for one decile of equivalized income. In columns, you have from left to right the years of the survey from 2007 to 2022. What we can see is that for young adults from 18 to 30, the home ownership rate is below 20%, largely below 20%, and is stable across time. On the other side, for 61 plus people, there are some inequalities. It's from 50% to 75% ownership rate, but remains stable across time. But what you can see between 31 to 60 years old, there is a divergence trend with high income groups remaining stable, but low income groups, so ownership fall by about 50% also. These are some clear implications. Housing inequalities is increasing across generations. Lower income households are becoming more dependent on rental markets, and these markets are increasingly concentrated in the hand of fewer and fewer owners, actually. And with that, I will leave the floor to Yamina. Thank you.
Thank you, Valentin. The other worry from the Swiss voters that we checked what are the implications and how sufficiency could help in address it is the one related to the relations with the EU. So what we see here is the trade balance for Switzerland for the last year for which data were available, 2024. It is clear that the EU, being geographically located in Europe, that its main trade partners are European countries, are EU member states, and to some extent the UK, so all European countries. So one would think that given the current geopolitical context and given the geographical location of Switzerland in Europe and given the importance of the EU as a whole as trading partner, so Switzerland would work on aligning its trade strategy or agreement with those of the European Union. Unfortunately, it's not going to be the case, at least for the energy sector, because there is, I don't know if you know about this treaty, there is the Energy Charter Treaty, which is a treaty that was launched by the European Union in the past that protects foreign investment in energy supply, including in fossil fuels and in nuclear. The EU and its member states are getting out of it. So the EU and already 15 countries, EU member states, the biggest ones, have already withdrawn from this treaty. And we do have the remaining countries are in the process to withdraw, but Switzerland decided to remain in this ecocide treaty. They say in the modernized version of this ecocide treaty, but this modernized version of the ecocide treaty is a treaty that will continue to protect fossil fuels until 2040. So this misalignment will be a real threat for Switzerland from energy perspective, because it's related to energy and for its relations with its main trading partners. What we do expect to happen, and it's already happening actually, is that because when you withdraw from this treaty, there is a sunset clause that allows the foreign investors to sue the countries that withdraw from the treaty in private arbitration, private tribunals for 20 years more. And what we warned Switzerland about is that if you remain there, so Switzerland will be used as a basis for foreign investors to sue EU member states. And fortunately or unfortunately, yesterday there is Swiss affiliate of Russia's Luke Oil is planning published that they are going to sue Bulgaria using this treaty. So it's already happening. My question is, will the EU how the EU is going as a whole is going to react to that. So the reaction is going to be extremely tough, and the trade relationship with Switzerland are going to be completely different because the Switzerland decided to remain in this treaty. And the only reason to remain in this treaty is to protect the Swiss financial system instead of protecting the Swiss citizen. When we look to the overall picture in Switzerland, of course, for each of these gaps that we identify, when we look to the chat sufficiency, we do have a list of policies that we could propose. However, we don't do that. Why? Because actually in Switzerland, there is nothing at the federal level. And if there is nothing on sufficiency at the federal level, so it does not make any sense to go to propose to the Swiss at the local level the policies, the sufficiency policies for housing, for inequality, etc., because they still have to overcome the federal blindness to sufficiency. So our main recommendation is to set task force at the federal level on sufficiency, and with sufficiency agoras at the local level, because as I mentioned, sufficiency is very much embedded in what's happening. You must contextualize it, and this is why we need these agoras everywhere actually in the world. And given how the Swiss democracy is organized, it is likely that Switzerland is one of the countries where these agoras could exist. However, to make sure that the recommendations from the agoras will be taken into account, we need to have the sufficiency task force at the federal level, and this is exactly what this is the kind of work that the Swiss Sufficiency Lab will be working on in the coming months and years. Thank you. with this, I give the floor to Mashael.
Yeah, so I picked a few questions for you, the one who were the more voted. So first, there's one about the Swiss Local Sufficiency Initiative. You mentioned that it was fragmented and misaligned. Can you elaborate on these misalignments by giving examples?
Yeah, so there is, for example, an interesting initiative in Switzerland, which is about the sufficiency in rural areas. In this project, around 40-ish municipalities have been considered. It's more research project actually, because then what they bring to us is quite interesting, because they bring to us that from the interviews with the mayors, we know that some of the mayors have already captured that sufficiency is not just about energy, but it's also about equity, and they are trying to embed it in their policy action. However, it's not written in the law. So when it's not written in the law, so this means that when the majority changes, then this means that it may change. There is no continuity. And then the other fragmentation that we did find is that we identified several NGOs, think tanks, etc., working on sufficiency. None of them is solely dedicated to sufficiency. And their understanding of sufficiency is very much about energy sufficiency. And then there is a big misunderstanding, because it's very much, and it was the case in France until recently, it's very much about sufficiency is about reducing the demand, while sufficiency is about avoiding the demand. And it's not just about energy, but it's about all natural resources. And there is no forum for all these people to get together. That's why the Swiss Sufficiency Lab is set.
Thank you. And I add another question from a person who is struggling with her students to locate business efforts towards sufficiency in the definition. She mentioned that maybe it's hiding somewhere. Should we add policy efforts, daily practices, and business practices? Can you elaborate on these business efforts towards sufficiency?
Well, the business practices are allowed by the policies, actually. So if you do have the policies, the policy measures, then this will lead to the business sufficiency business practices. We all know that policymakers are very much linked to business leaders, and that the policies are designed to ensure that the business will run. So if you don't get the policies right, it is unlikely that you shift to business practices in sufficiency. So the leading thing, and the other point to keep in mind, is that business is usually about individuals or group of individuals. Sufficiency is about the collective effort. The collective effort comes from policies, not from the business.
Thank you very much. And I'll ask a last one, but we don't have much time left. It's where does your information come from that Switzerland is sending CO2 to the global south?
Oh, you can look at it no, it's planned to. You can look at it in the Swiss climate law, the climate neutrality law, that the negative emissions will be offset.
Thank you very much. So from now, I will just share my screen for you. And I'll pass the floor to Mashael if it worked properly.
Thanks a lot, Andrea, and thank you, Yamina, for your wonderful keynote. So now we'll move on to the roundtable on sufficiency, and feel free to keep asking questions as well in the Q&A, and we'll keep typing answers and try to see answer as many as we can. So now we'll move to this roundtable, which is my great pleasure to moderate today. We have a panel of distinguished speakers here who I'll just very briefly introduce, and then we'll go in a roundtable to get more of their thoughts. So welcoming from academia, we have Professor Julia Steinberger, who's Professor of Ecological Economics at the University of Lausanne, and she has conducted award-winning research on living well within limits. So welcome, Julia. To offer perspectives from policy and industry, we welcome Cédric, Jeanneret, who is a Geneva Grand Council member with the Parliament of the Canton of Geneva, and who is also a senior energy expert at SIG, which is the Industrial Services of Geneva. So he's able to offer us both of these perspectives today. From the policy and more of a civil society perspective as well, we welcome Dr. Marcel Hänggi, who is a journalist by training, and as well he's an author of several books. He is currently working with the Swiss Energy Foundation, where he's responsible for the Sustainable Energy Consumption Program. Then from philanthropy and the civil society lens, we welcome Joséphine von Mitschke-Collande, I hope I said it correctly, who is a sustainability and systems innovation expert at Mercator Foundation, Switzerland. And last but certainly not least, we welcome back Yamina Saheb, who again is the director and co-founder of the World Sufficiency Lab, and she's also a lecturer and researcher at Sciences Po in Paris. So thank you all for being here. A warm welcome again. Perhaps we could just open up with some reflections on the conclusions of the analysis that was just presented by Yamina and Valentin in the keynotes. We'll try to get each of your inputs if possible, so it would be great if you can keep your response to within a minute, and then we'll come back to Yamina afterwards so she can comment as well. So the floor is open. Would anybody like to start? Any thoughts that came up? Please go ahead, Joséphine.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Does it work? Perfect. Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Yamina, Mashael, and the team for presenting your work and as well the whole idea or the starting of the idea what the hub should be and which direction it should go. Perhaps some first reaction on what Yamina presented in relation to sufficiency within the Swiss context. And I think it is a bit of this kind of sufficiency being something which is really powerful for finding solutions that we need and which are within the complexity of the transformation we need to go with as a society to be able to continue to live on this planet. And I think from the Swiss context, it's something that I have realized now working for almost 10 years, more than 10 years in Switzerland, as well being in contact with the society, civil society. And just one announcement, I don't feel myself representing civil society, but it's much more what we hear as a foundation. And we see ourselves a bit of like a sponge where you are very much have a bit of the ability to have the big ears, the big eyes, and be a lot in touch with what's happening on the ground, what people are doing, where they're going. And perhaps there's one thing is on this, there's non-organization which is solely dedicated on sufficiency within the Swiss context. And I would be perhaps a bit careful and perhaps challenge it. I think it's actually good because at some point realizing as well from the cultural and contextual differences within the cantons, the cities, and just from a language perspective, sufficiency in a German context and in English for sure, but as well French, Italian, etc., doesn't mean exactly the same thing and has a different type of history, cultural history that is vehicled within what kind of word you use. And we have a study that is coming out that we have, that the Berner Fachhochschule will be presenting in March, where they have asked how many people do know the word sufficiency within the Swiss context and can actually have a definition that perhaps from a more academic perspective we could align with. And it's only 10%. And I think it is the diversity of approaches on sufficiency which would be able to make the richness of it. And I think this is something we are trying to support, to have the ecosystem of different people who have different perspectives on it, on sufficiency, be able to work together and actually to develop solutions that are inspiring and at the end as well able to if we talk about policy approaches, that people are voting for it. And I think it's something that we need to be very careful of, not a top-down, not a centralized approach, but really the diversity of approaches. And that means as well diversity of approaches within sufficiency, which needs to work together And I think this is exactly what something like this kind of hub can help to promote and help to bring together in order to make something, sexy, make sufficiency sexy in a way that people see at this being something, a benefit for them.
Thank you, Joséphine. I see, Julia, you've raised your hand. Would you like to comment?
Yes, I think, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I think that what Joséphine just said is really important in terms of the Swiss context, because there are organizations. So, for instance, between research and practice, and to some extent administration and industry, there are organizations that are really doing great work. So, Negawatt is doing fantastic work, has really good models and ways of proposing solutions, for instance, to municipalities. And as well as, for instance, so I saw Philippe Talman and Sasha Nick are also here. So there's their whole research groups that are doing this kind of research, also very much focused on the Swiss scale. And I think one of the things to understand in terms of the federal level is that because certain things are in Swiss law devolved to the cantonal level or to the municipal level, there's very strong resistance to having them. Like, the Swiss rule is, if it doesn't belong, if it can be avoided, that something is at the federal level, we avoid it. And that's certainly been the rule for buildings so far, which is a major topic. So I think it's just really important that all of these, that the way that the Swiss Sufficiency Lab positions itself is much more to acknowledge also the good work that's being done, and not just say, oh, this isn't being done. It's not it's a sort of blank space, but really work positively with people, and also understand that in the Swiss context, some of these things are not considered desirable at the federal level. That's just one example. So I think that there's a really important role for bringing this topic forward, but it should also be done very much in a supportive way.
Thanks a lot, Julia.
And I think that Cédric also probably has thoughts on this, if I'm not
May
mistaken.
I respond, Mashael, at some point on this?
Yes, please. Yes, I was just about to pass it to
Cédric,
you.
do you have something to say on this, or? Maybe Cédric, you have been following, I assume, as a policymaker, the debate from this MP who asked about the inclusion of sufficiency and the response from the federal level. If you could share your thoughts about that.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say that I totally agree with what you said, Yamina, and also what you say, Julia, and also what you say, Mashael, and also the input of Mercator Foundation is very important. So we are a big sufficiency family here around this virtual table. And yes, I'm speaking to you from the headquarters of Service Industriel de Genève, the biggest multi-utility in Switzerland, but still a small company in Europe. And yes, we consider sufficiency as a pillar of our industrial action. And I'm not speaking of energy sufficiency only, Yamina. And we also consider our responsibility to preserve our hundreds of thousands clients of non-chosen sufficiency, which means activation of Austral plan, which is basically a COVID management of energy. And yes, as you said, I'm also a CAPOF member of the local parliament, and we look very carefully at what happened at federal level. And yes, without surprise, the sphere privée, the private part of our way of living is very protected in Switzerland, and all action dedicated to sufficiency are seen as something against that, which is exactly the contrary. With sufficiency, we can increase a lot of things, happiness, the feeling of not being alone in the society, the resilience, local resilience, which is very, very important. And the positive aspect maybe is that security of of goods, security of energy is emphasis since the Ukraine the Ukraine war, and the politician can't see that elephant in the room. So we know that we have something to do, but we still hesitate to act on the roots, which has the basis of our so-called prosperity based on what we have done during after Second World War. We have now to think of another model of society, and all these type of reflection are challenging, but definitely I think it's time to go in it, and we will have some opposition, etc. But I think it's a normal way of a democratic approach, and we have plenty of tools to achieve our gains of sufficiency here in Switzerland and all in the world.
Thank you, Cédric. So we'll take some time now to move around our virtual table to dig deeper into the different perspectives from our very diverse set of panelists here. Let's go to Marcel, because we haven't heard from you yet. Marcel, in your recent book that translates in English to Because It's Right, Proposals for an Ecological Federal Constitution, you discuss something very important, that sufficiency is already embedded in the Swiss legal system and in our constitution. Could you explain this further for those of us less acquainted with the Swiss legal system and constitution?
Yes, pardon. Yes, thank you very much for inviting me, Mashael. Wait a second. So, can you understand me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, actually, when I started to analyze the Swiss constitution on this point, I was really astonished because what Yamina said, that on federal level, we don't have any sufficiency policy. That's correct. However, we would have the legal basis, and there are several propositions in the federal constitution which I would call sufficiency provisions, although of course the word sufficiency doesn't appear. And I will concentrate here on energy sufficiency. I know, Yamina, you're right that it should not be only about energy, but just here to focus on that. The energy article, which was adopted by a popular vote in 1987, it says that, and it says it twice, that the energy must be used in an economic and rational way. And the interesting thing is that the word economic, in the sense of savings, it appears only on 3 occasions in a constitution. Namely, it's about spatial planning, about water, and about energy. There is no requirement to save money, interestingly. The constitution only says we must not spend more than we earn in the long run. When it comes to energy, it's different. There is a clear prioritize. The constitution clearly prioritizes energy savings over an increase of production. The reality is quite different, and I think it has to do with some understandings. There is also in the energy article, it says that the Confederation and the cantons are responsible to provide a sufficient energy supply. That means a sufficient supply for basic energy needs. However, the understanding in the public debate is sufficient for anything, for any demand, which is actually the contrary of sufficiency. And well, I would say, no, the interesting thing is also that the Federal Council back in the 1980s, when this energy article was introduced into the Constitution, said explicitly that sufficient does not mean sufficient for anything. It only means sufficient for basic needs, and only once the potential for savings have been exhausted. And so I would say, for instance, if we need energy to power AI for producing fake porno videos, that most probably would not be considered as a basic need.
Thank you, Marcel. And maybe going further from that, if sufficiency is already embedded in our legal and constitutional foundations, why is it so marginal in practice still and in public debate? And what could help translate the legal basis in place for sufficiency into concrete policy and planning decisions?
Yeah, sufficiency is mostly framed in a very negative way as something very unpleasant by politics and by media. And I asked the Federal Office for Energy why they don't do any sufficiency policy, and they do it deliberately. They say, for instance, for the planning basics like the energy scenarios, they deliberately exclude everything what would require behavioral changes. So they told me that, okay, the Constitution states that we need an economic and rational energy use, and they say it must be both economic and rational. Sufficiency is only economic, but if efficiency is economic and rational. That's quite stupid, of course, but that shows that they have a very strange idea of what sufficiency is. What they also told me is that it's not up to us to forbid people what they do and what they cannot do, because sufficiency is a purely individual decision. And therefore, what Yamina said, the very first point, what is asked usually, what is sufficiency? That would be important, because those people at the Federal Office for Energy, they don't know.
Yeah, I think Yamina pointed out correctly in the beginning of her definition that it's the distinction between behavioral change and individual choice versus the design of an entire system to make life better for all. I don't know if Yamina, if you want to add anything else there.
I would like just to emphasize is that our analysis show that there is an ecosystem, sufficiency, let's call it a sufficiency bottom-up ecosystem in Switzerland. So there is research conducted, etc. However, moving from this research and from these singular initiatives to have sufficiency in the Swiss law requires more work to be done, and requires to have a more long-term vision that goes beyond the initiatives that already exist. So, and this is one reason why the SSL has been established. So there is this ecosystem, but it's unlikely that what exists will make sufficiency first, for example, in the federal law in Switzerland. You just have to assess this from organization perspective to get that. And sufficiency does not contradict, and this is very important, does not contradict the Swiss constitution. Because it does not contradict the Swiss constitution, so it means that with an important work to be done, it should be easy in Switzerland to consider sufficiency in the various laws that you have. And then yes, there is this governance issue. You have what is done at the cantonal level, what is done at the local level, etc. However, what we know from the policy design is that if you do have a bottleneck somewhere on governance, and this is what you have in Switzerland, because there is nothing at the federal level, it is unlikely that the initiatives, or if it's included in the action plan of one country, or one canton or one city, that it will spread everywhere. So you cannot deny the need of the federal level to have it spread everywhere. To make it to mainstream sufficiency, you need the federal level. And this is why our recommendation is to work at two different levels, the sufficiency agoras, to clarify what is not clear, to ensure that there is a common understanding of what sufficiency means and what sufficiency could bring to the well-being of the Swiss people and the Swiss economy. And then you need this task force at the federal level to, at some point, these two must meet. And it's when these two are mature enough and to meet and to work together that sufficiency will become reality in Switzerland. Otherwise, we will remain with initiatives and few scientific publications, which are good, but not enough to make it happen.
Thank you, Yamina. I see, Cédric, you have your hand up if you would like to quickly react, and then I can follow it up as well while you have the stage with another question for you.
Thank you. Yes, I want to emphasize this idea of sufficiency agoras. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, we are in a democracy, in a liberal democracy in Switzerland, and we don't like the state will telling us what we have to do, what will be the level of heating in our home, etc. And yes, that's a fact. But if we meet some people, some neighbors, some people chosen by, comment tu dis, tiré au sort?
Randomly.
Randomly tied, then you can, as they did in France several years ago with Assemblée citoyenne pour le climat, then you can avoid this type of you are green, you want that. You are blue, you want that. You are red, you want that. When people can share what they want, what is really important for them, then we can start to change our way of living. Then we can have our own choices, not the choices dictated by the market or by the other forces. So really this idea of decentralized democracy, I think in Switzerland we can do it. It sometimes will be difficult because, for example, in Geneva we have the 500th anniversary of our democracy, and we decide to create a citizens' assembly, and then the government has stepped down, has decided to stop it because the parliament wanted it. As the politicians are afraid of the power of the citizens. It's very strange, but when a member of the parliament is elected, it seems to him that he has the power, and then the population has nothing to say more. So I think it's a wrong approach, of course, and these ideas of sufficiency agoras with real people talking with other real people without caps, red caps, yellow caps, green caps, could be a very strong tool for implementing these sufficiency aspects and these sufficiency gifts for all.
Thank you, Cédric. The question I had is perhaps related to this discussion then, coming because you have this unique position both at the interface of government and industry, but starting with perhaps the policymaking side of things, from the cantonal or municipal policymaking perspective, how do you see that municipalities and cantons can advance sufficiency while inspiring then the federal level to follow? And what are some concrete policy levers that you think could realistically deliver sufficiency gains in the near term?
Yes, for example, in my village, we are a small village. We organize with the University of Geneva a meeting dedicated to sufficiency. And we make it very horizontal way, and we start to discuss on what is really important for us. And I have plenty of neighbors, farmers, retired people, also young people, and I was a bit afraid of wow, they won't hear about sufficiency, which is not sexy as is what said before. And I was very impressed by this idea of, when we discuss what is really important in your life, it is not the amount of goods that you have. It is the relation you have inside your family, inside your neighborhood. And then when we talk, maybe we can share more things. We can share cars. Maybe we can share tools. Maybe we can help the poorest of the population. And then, yes, I really think that this real democracy from the bottom can be very powerful. And for sure, also from the top, we also need a clear definition of what are we talking about, and it will also help what are the definitions. And as Professor Hänggi said, it is almost written in the Constitution. Maybe we have in the law, maybe we have to how can I say that, to implement that in a more operational way. And as you said, Yamina, Canton de Vaud has done it, Canton of Zurich also, and I hope Canton of Geneva will do it soon, because yes, when we talk of sufficiency, we talk also of our security, we talk of our sovereignty, we talk of our prosperity, and these security, prosperity, and sovereignty aspects are very broad, very, yes, it's a shared common value in Switzerland. So I think we can have some political achievement bottom up and top down with these two aspects.
Thank you. Just keeping an eye on the time. Well, Marcel, do you have a quick comment perhaps? I'd like to get then to Julia and to Joséphine as well, but please go ahead with a quick comment.
Yeah, very quickly, I very much agree on what Cédric said about the citizens' assemblies or agoras. And I think we have one particular obstacle in Switzerland, namely the belief of many people that Switzerland is the ideal, the best democracy on the world. No other people can vote so often on political decisions. And I think that's really a hard obstacle to overcome, to tell people, no, our democracy is not perfect, can be improved, and it should be improved.
Could you comment on in which ways?
For instance, what Cédric has been talking about forms of deliberative democracy, because now what we have is direct democracy. We can say yes or no, but we cannot say, oh yes, but something like this. So we would need forms for what in political sciences is called deliberative democracy.
Thank you. So let us now go to Julia. Julia, from your award-winning work on living well within limits, from this lens, could you comment on where you see Switzerland's biggest sufficiency leverage points that protect or improve well-being while simultaneously reducing our ecological footprint?
Okay, well, that's a whole other question, because we've been talking very much about Switzerland from the perspective of Swiss citizens. The biggest leverage point of Switzerland is actually in the world system, and I'm talking about our industry and financial actors and the fact that we are home to large extractive industries that contribute to planetary destruction elsewhere, whether it's Glencore or Trafigura or Vitol or UBS or so many others. And that's one of the key challenges, actually. So one of the issues is that we have a political economy where the strongest actors and the most powerful are very much aligned with environmental destruction and extractivism, including the Swiss National Bank. And I think that's just in terms of what Switzerland, the biggest leverage is actually the role that Switzerland plays in the world economy, not necessarily particularly at home, simply because of the way the magnitude of these numbers works out. In terms of Switzerland acting on sufficiency internally, I completely agree with this proposal of agoras from the Swiss Sufficiency Lab. I completely agree also with the fact that the reconsideration of what Swiss democracy means and how it can actually be, improved even after many hundreds of years is going to be a topic. And I just wanted to say that I think it's also interesting to think about not just what exists in the Constitution, which I wasn't aware of. So Marcel, I really need to go read your book, but also that there is other social science research, including by somebody help me, Antonietta Di Giulio, Enrico De Fila, who have shown that there's broad Swiss popular support for things like sustainable consumption corridors, and that this is something that people feel is a legitimate topic of public policy. So this idea that things can only be individual is not in fact reflected in Swiss popular opinion from social science studies so I think that this is quite interesting. And I think that we also have to think about what Marcel was talking about, which is that we have administrations, including at the federal level, that don't act in a neutral way, either regarding the science or the policy. They basically take on a very strong, I would call it political orientation in the way that they interpret what they're supposed to do. And they also, think, feel oriented by the politics of the Federal Council. They feel they live in fear of applying the law and applying the Constitution like they should as neutral agents. They don't act neutrally, sadly. And what the example that Marcel gave was excellent in that regard. And I think that that's probably a topic that we need to discuss more.
Thank you, Julia. And maybe also related to a point that Yamina and Valentin highlighted in their talk, Yamina was mentioning that one of the concerns of the Swiss population is that of our relationship with the EU. And she discussed the Energy Charter Treaty that protects energy investments, including fossil fuel infrastructure. And so multiple EU countries are pulling out of this treaty. But if Switzerland remains in the treaty, could you comment on how you see this affecting our ability to pursue any sustainability goals meaningfully, including sufficiency-oriented policy changes?
So I think thanks for that point. I think this very much goes in the direction of what I just talked about in terms of the political economy of Switzerland. What we see is we have a Swiss government, sadly, in the person of Albert Rochety, who is the head of the federal department in charge of this treaty, who is pushing to align Switzerland with large extractive industries, and in fact, rather transparently hoping that Switzerland becomes attractive to, Russian fossil fuel companies or whoever else to implant themselves in Switzerland to attack the climate policies of our neighbors. And so I think that this is something that's very dangerous for our democracy. I think it's very dangerous for our economy. I think it's dangerous for our whole country because it basically staying within this treaty aligns Switzerland with large extractive industries, especially fossil fuels. And that basically makes us a Trojan horse and inside Europe, trying to really have an active role in undermining our neighbors' climate and economic security and energy sovereignty goals as well. So I think this is really an unacceptable position. And the frightening thing is, as Yamina has been communicating and researching this and really trying to alert people from different European countries, either policymakers or the public, civil society. The problem is in Switzerland, this topic is really very little known. Is really not known yet. And it's been covered very, very lightly. And Switzerland is really having this sort of outlaw position. And yeah, it's just a very difficult situation. I think that situation makes our lives much more difficult if we can't get out of this treaty and raise that topic within Swiss democracy.
Thank you so much. I think that connects very nicely, actually, with a question I wanted to loop in now, Joséphine, into the conversation again, who can bring us a perspective from the funder and civil society lens. You mentioned, Julia, the niche, that it's very much a niche area, sufficiency as a topic and a taboo subject. And so, Joséphine, from your lens, what would it take to move sufficiency from the niche to the mainstream in Switzerland? You could also comment on what are the highest leverage investments, pilots, narratives, capacities. How do we start making this shift?
I think I would like to react on this, perhaps on the wording of scalability. Because yes, I think scalability is important. We want to make things big and we have the feeling we are there. But the problem is we are talking about a social system, and scalability is really a wording that comes much more from a technical perspective. You have one technology has been developed and you scale it out. The thing, it doesn't work in complex societal systems. And I think this is something that I think is one of the biggest leverage is actually to rethink how we talk about this kind of diffusion. And I think we are in a world, we're in Switzerland, but we know how the world is unraveling around us. Switzerland as well has polarization is as well very, very present. So I think the community we have been working within, sustainability, community awareness about these kind of issues, need to be very, very careful about the theories of change that we have incorporated about how do we diffuse something, how does societal change happen. And I think it is in this kind of context we need to be careful. And I think scalability means, oh, it's the fixed solution. And the fixed solution, it's not yet there. So what we really need with sufficiency is more space for experimentation. I know there are great things already happening. There is technology already happening, etc. But in order to make it diffuse, we still need to think, how do we diffuse it and how do we experiment it? And as well, how do we experiment with existing things from different angles? So sufficiency is very much either it's about this individual type of things versus systemic, structural approach, or it is a very, oh, you shouldn't, or you should. And I think we should be much more into this kind, or we should. What does it mean, sufficiency from an angle from a health perspective? What does sufficiency mean in an angle from security? Exactly what Julia was saying, because that's the topics that are coming up. And that's what we need. We need to build coalitions. And I think this is actually one of the biggest leverages within the Swiss context. It is, yes, experiment, test things out within complex systems such as cities. And then actually it is, how do we build coalitions? And what kind of wording are we using? And how do we reflect within this kind of community where we are in? How do we build a coalition with people or people who have other type of ideas to make sufficiency sexy as well for policymakers? And I think this is one of the biggest leverages that is not very easy, because we have the research part coming from either social science or technical issues. We have the activist, we have the policymaker, etc. And it's really, really tough to talk together. And then very often we're in this kind of approach by saying, oh yeah, we need 2 or 3 sufficiency visions, very clear visions where we are going, which is going somewhere in a direction where at the end we think we can get people on board and move towards this. And at the end, it is not just the static vision where to go, but it is this kind of process. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to link it with democracy. And it's exactly about this kind of approach of agoras and others. How do we translate sufficiency within a policy context? What are the narratives that we're playing with in order to make the process towards sufficiencies, approaches, sexy, engaging, that people want to participate in this?
And maybe related to that, the last point you mentioned, what do you see then as the minimum proof, the evidence, the story, the narrative that we need that could convince key decision makers to start, I don't want to use the word scaling because you mentioned that that's maybe not appropriate, but to make it more mainstream sufficiency in order to support quality of life while reducing our ecological footprint?
I think the minimum is, or the minimum, I think it's starting these kind of things that were actually happening right now. I mean, I have started to work on sufficiency for now, I think it was the last 5 years, and I've been in sustainability sector for quite a while already. And it's so interesting how things have moved on these past 3-4 years, especially in a context where everybody says, oh, you should not talk about sufficiency, or sustainability is really not on the top of the agenda anymore, etc. But how things are really emerging. And I think it is what is the thing that is motivating us to act within this kind of space. And I think it's capturing this kind of motivation that is actually, I think, the most powerful dynamic process to capture in order to move forward. And I think that's what, as a foundation, we see is important, to give the space for different actors and for this kind of ecosystem to flourish, to connect, to work together. And at some point, that's the most important thing, work together and be able to build a coalition of allied organization in order to move forward.
Thank you so much, Joséphine. We are pretty close to time at the moment. I see, Julia, you have your hand up. We haven't yet gone to the Q&A. However, I see from Andréa, she's monitoring the Q&A for us. Let me go to at least one question, one or two questions from the audience, and then we'll come back for a lightning round where you can also add any final thoughts. So let me see. So
I answered all the questions, Mashael. There are only two reminders, one that came just now.
Well, maybe Andréa, you could comment. I just received a message for you with 3 general questions. Andréa, maybe you can speak to them directly to avoid my reading them since you are well acquainted already.
It was already answered on the chat, but there were 2 things that came several times. One thing is about the word sufficiency that can have a negative connotation or be perceived as too academic. How to make this word acceptable? Is this word adequate?
Thanks, Andréa. So that's an open question, I think, to anybody.
Exactly.
So when I can take this one. So why we propose the agoras? Because we know that there are misunderstanding about sufficiency. What is it? Well, very often we are in a country. It's not exactly like in France. France, everyone talks about sobriété, which is sufficiency, because it was brought to the policy debate since more than 20 years. But Switzerland and Germany are the 2 other countries where the word is used. But it is used without clarification of what it means. So it's very often mixed up with efficiency, and we see some of the comments mixing up sufficiency and efficiency. Why we propose the agoras is to have this debate, these discussions, clarifying what sufficiency is, what it is not, and what sufficiency brings, what sufficiency cannot bring. It cannot bring solutions for everything. It's not what we are claiming. And how sufficiency is, what are the sufficiency policies and measures, etc. And you need to have this debate. We need to have this clarification everywhere in the world where we would like sufficiency, where people are interested in making sufficiency embedded in the policies. Otherwise, it's not possible. From our side, what we will do is that we think that the Sufficiency Academy will help clarifying how sufficiency is considered in scientific literature. However, this is not enough. In addition to that, the SSL will complement with in-person workshops to discuss sufficiency, to bring what is in science to the debate in Switzerland. And it will be debated within the Swiss context, like sufficiency must be debated and will be debated in France within the French context, etc.
Thank you, Yamina. So we are at time, but I would like to go to one last lightning round takeaway from all of you. So in 1 minute or less, there's 2 parts to this last input. So the first is for one hopeful vision. Explain to us, what does a sufficiency-oriented society in Switzerland look like and feel like in everyday life? And the second part is, what is one concrete action that you'd like to see your sector take to have them commit to that to help us move towards the vision? I will leave it open to whoever would like to begin.
I'll make it easy for me to begin by not necessarily going exactly in that direction, but more building on the previous comments. I think that what Yamina said and what Joséphine said in terms of bringing this topic into debate is super important. And I think that one of the most important things we can do is make clear that sufficiency and this sort of, lowering of resource use while providing good conditions for people as a societal goal is something that responds to people's material interests and that ensures economic security. So one of the things we're seeing a lot of polarization and the rise of the far right and honestly fascist policies and movements all over the world, including in Switzerland, and they're building on economic insecurity very much. And I think that one of the things that we have to do is maybe not necessarily use the word sufficiency, but certainly make it align with material interests. So basically say, this is going to lower bills. This is going to make your life possible. This is going to mean you don't have to worry. Neither yourself or your children will have to worry for their future, because we're creating the society that allows them to thrive without having to spend lots of money and to use lots of resources we don't have. So I think that that kind of perspective and messaging is going to be essential, aligning with material interests.
Thank you, Julia. Marcel, please go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
I'm muted, Marcel.
Now
Now
it's
you're
good.
good.
Okay, pardon. I would like to answer the first question you asked. What, according to us, a more sufficient Switzerland would look like. A more sufficient Switzerland would have much less cars, and that would be great. I think a more sufficient Switzerland would be more beautiful.
And what's the concrete action that you'd like your
Concrete
sector to
action.
commit to?
Actually, I think we have been talking about already. I would like to have discussions, real debates on topics that we cannot debate now in our form of democracy, where everything is about yes or no. So we have been talking about these deliberative forms of democracy.
Wonderful, thank you. Joséphine or Cédric or Yamina, if you have any vision.
Maybe I will be the last.
Yes, my
Please,
point
please.
is Switzerland can be, I agree, it can be beautiful. And I think, yes, the idea of quality is more important than the quantity. It's a nice motto to have. And I remember these words of, I don't remember, it was, yes, limit to growth. One of the authors said we can't always have more of what it's really important. I think it's something important to know the difference between what is important, what is less important, and we always can have more of what is really important. I think it's a great takeaway. And concrete action will be to build this coalition of allies that was said by Joséphine. We will be part of it. I think all the Swiss society sector have something to add. The industry, the academy, the citizens, everyone has something to add. And to build together definitions of sufficiencies can be a great project and concrete action for the next months, next years. And we will come back with some proposal on it.
Thank you, Cédric. I think we're missing still Joséphine.
Yes. I'm responding to the whole thing about the wording of sufficiency. So I think it is that people who are just, just person on the street just saying, oh, that's sufficiency, I didn't know. So even actually acting in a way sufficiently within a structure and a system where it's easy to do it, that at the end you're not even conscious that this is sufficient. Or is in the definition of sufficiency. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very careful when we talk about who should know about sufficiency. And I'm careful about the wording. I think it is the essence that we have to spread and the positive aspect of the essence of sufficiency. And I think when we talk about the wording, it's much more talking about it within an expert community. But I don't think that we need to go sufficiency, that's it. But actually, it's the essence and the feeling about it in a positive way. That's the goal of this kind of community we're within. And I think the next thing, yes, it is building coalitions of the willings and be able to accept the differences, what everybody is doing, but be able to work closely together. And everybody tries to pull where they have the energy and the resources in the direction to pull and to pull together. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And
so
Yamina.
yeah. So for me, this is a call to join the sufficiency movement and to have all the people who are already doing work or those who would like to do work on sufficiency in Switzerland and beyond to invite you to join this online space that we offer to be able to organize ourselves, because we must be organized as humanity given what's coming on from the ecological and the geopolitical crisis to ensure that we will secure a safe space for ourselves and for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yamina. So with that, I wish we had longer to chat because there's so many more interesting conversations to be had here. But I thank you all again, virtual round of applause for all of our panelists for this inspiring conversation, and also to the audience for their engagement as well. I see we were able to answer almost 30 questions in the meantime. And I hope we're all able to take away some new insights from this discussion. I certainly did. So thank you again. So what we'll do now is we'll move into the short SSL presentation from Andréa and myself on the vision, the roadmap, and how to engage with the SSL. So with that, I'll just introduce myself also briefly, and Andréa can do the same. So I am heading the SSL together with Andréa and Yamina, and I'm also, my full-time job is as a group leader of macro energy systems at the Urban Energy Systems Laboratory, which is headed by Yorgos Mavromatidis at Empa. And yeah, so that's I won't go into more about me to save time, but I'd like to pass it to Andréa so she can also introduce herself better.
Thank you, Mashael. I'm the General Secretary of the SSL, and I'm currently working at the University of Lausanne for an Agora-like project as a coordinator between the center. It's co-organized by the Platform of Health and Sustainability and the Center of Sustainability and the Competence Center in Sustainability of Lausanne.
Thanks, Andréa. So to start with, we just wanted to touch on the motivation behind this whole project. Why do we need an SSL and at this point? I think there's gains to be had both at the national and particularly at the international scale on our connection. We, as Julia pointed out as well, there's great work being done already on sufficiency across geographically and across sectors, different actors. What the SSL can help us do is, as we said, it's quite niche still, this topic. So the SSL can give us a space to better coordinate our activities across these different disciplines and scales, from the local to the regional to the national level. It's meant to be a very inclusive space. So I do want to emphasize that it's not only welcoming to professionals, if you're a researcher, policymaker, or practitioner from the business world, but also to citizens and also to the youth. So it's important to have everybody be part of this conversation if sufficiency has a chance to make a positive societal change. It's also a space for ideation. So being able to coordinate, connect with one another gives us a space to create. We would like to have workshops, help form consortium to co-create projects, to submit those together. So it's a space for ideation, certainly, for collaboration, of course. So this is across sectors, as I mentioned, across disciplines, across the geographic boundaries within Switzerland, for us to work on projects together. And also, as I'll mention in the next slide, internationally as well, to bring visibility to the work that's already being done. Because sufficiency is such a niche topic, it's important that we have a space to bring better visibility to the work that is already being done and that will be done in the future, so we can learn from one another and elevate one another as well.
Excuse me, Mashael, we are not in the next slide. Can you please put it, Andréa?
No, we're still in the right slide. We're in the correct slide. And the unity as well. So we want to be able to be united in our efforts towards this common goal. And finally, to, of course, have impact that we need to have. So to have real societal impact and create these communities that thrive within planetary boundaries. And now I can go to the next slide. So the one of the, I think the strongest points about the SSL is that it's embedded in a global network of sufficiency labs around the world. So the Swiss Sufficiency Lab is the first to launch, but many are following very shortly after. And this gives us a chance for a unique cross-fertilization across the different countries, for cross-border learnings, for exchanging ideas, and also for international collaboration opportunities as well. So I think this is one of the unique offerings of the SSL in the way that it's embedded within the World Sufficiency Lab, and this doesn't currently exist to the best of our knowledge. So the next slide. I'll also just comment quickly on the objectives for the SSL. So legally, the SSL is registered as an association in Switzerland. It's a nonprofit association. It's a think and do tank, which bridges research, policy, and practice. It has four main objectives underneath that. The first is to advance research and innovation in sufficiency through inter and transdisciplinary research, to explore it as a lever for genuine societal transformation towards well-being and sustainability. We do this by fostering cross-sectoral and systemic collaboration for systemic transformation, ultimately translating research into action. As I just mentioned on the previous slide, by being embedded in this global network of sufficiency labs, we can strengthen our international network. And through the World Sufficiency Lab platforms that Yamina introduced, tools like the Chat Sufficiency, the Sufficiency Academy, and our online global community with National Sufficiency Lab sub-channels is a way for us to disseminate knowledge and best practices, not just from the local scale, but regional, federal, and beyond the borders of Switzerland as well. So with that, I'd like to pass the floor to Andréa.
Thank you very much. So I'll try to basically present you the roadmap in the following year. So the first step we had to do is scoping our activities. So previous year, we registered as an association in Zurich, and we've been institutionally hosting at Empa's Urban Energy System Lab, as you already said. And we began to map all the sufficiency actors we know, especially from the academic side, but not only, and it's still processing. And we already participate in a few research projects. And based on this, the priority of this year is really build and strengthen our foundation. It's begun today with this launch, which announces the creation of the Swiss Sufficiency Community. This community is meant to bring sufficiency at the front scene of Switzerland, with different stakeholders, with very different, coming from different horizons, civil society, policymakers, and we already presented this. And we want to conduct regular gatherings, in-person workshops, and also online sufficiency training session, thanks to the existing World Sufficiency Lab tools like the Academy, the chat library. And our goal is really to identify, support, and empower sufficiency ambassadors in Switzerland. The other big step in 2026 is the Swiss Sufficiency Gap report that Yamina has presented. And we will want to identify key stakeholders and building partners that can help us translate the report into action plan with strong research strategies, dissemination strategy, and communication strategy. And of course, we want to establish ourselves in the long term with funding and hiring. Next year, the big thing is about scaling up. So we want to organize a national sufficiency summit that will be organized based on previous work and also based on the community bottom-up inputs. That's why we will continue to engage the community through different workshops, online training, and different kind of events. And last but not least, in 2028, we want to scale up at the federal level with the organization of this task force and agoras we already talked about, and also to be embedding in more academic institutions in Switzerland. Of course, during all these years, other national labs will have matured like us, and we will be permanently reinforce international collaboration across the World Sufficiency Lab Consortium. So this was for the long term, medium term, let's say. But in the very short term, we have some upcoming events in May. We'll be hosting a conference session at the Swiss Technology and Society event. We'll also be hosting a workshop at the Climate with Zurich. The date has to be confirmed. and also a SSL seminar at EVAC. We'll be also participating in existing events like the one with the Platform Agenda 2030 workshop and the Geneva Sufficiency Days. So the World Sufficiency Lab has created this first sufficiency worldwide community. What it means, it's basically a discussion platform organized with multiple channels. It is Mattermost for those who knows this tool. It has a huge potential for getting organized together around sufficiency, and each national hub will have its own working channel. And we want to construct the Swiss channel with you based on your needs, your interest, and expertise, and also based on the information we already have with the World Sufficiency Lab tools. You can join already the community thanks to this QR code, and also or with the link which is just behind. We will send it to you in a follow-up email as well. Speaking about this follow-up email, it will contain today's launch recording and slides, so the link to the community, and also Swiss Sufficiency Gap report and other kind of useful information and next steps. To get more involved, or if you have questions, don't hesitate to contact us at SSL at the sufficiencylab.org. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn or checking out what is happening on the World Sufficiency Lab website. We are open to the last questions if you have some.
I haven't seen any new ones come in, but if there are any, now's your chance to quickly type them. Otherwise, I think that, well, we managed well on time.
Right on time.
We had in total 30 questions that we answered.
Yeah,
actually.
wonderful.
Yeah, wonderful.
Great. So then, on behalf of the entire SSL team, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, for your interest, for your openness, for your engagement. We're really looking forward to working together with you to realize our collective vision for sufficiency and a thriving society. Thank you.